Alrighty, welcome back to KC Grid Talk, episode number 56. As always, my name is Caleb Vieska, and as always, joining me, Emery Lida and Alexander Searle. The third round of the United States Pro Kart Series just got wrapped up over at Road America in Wisconsin, which honestly was great to be back in Wisconsin, great to be eating cheese curds all weekend, spotted cows now that I'm of age. It was a good time. We enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys at home enjoyed the racing because it was pretty banging, I would say, from start to finish. Proving myself wrong. After being there for a route, I was like, man, I don't know how this track's going to race. I'll be honest. It surpassed all my expectations, and it was cool to see the return of Road America as well.
I mean, Road America to me has always been one of the best racetracks that we go to. I'm so glad that we actually got to go back this year. Not only are we at one of the coolest racetracks on the car calendar, but then you put a go-kart track in the middle of it all. It's beautiful scenery. The cheese is fantastic. The food's great. And it happens to race good, too. And I think the coolest part is from when I last raced there in 2019, and then when we last raced there on the national calendar in 2022, and then up till now, the grip difference was absurd. That I think played a huge factor into why it raced so well. Not that it didn't race well beforehand, but I think it just added to it. I think it added to an element of difficulty that already was probably one of the 3 to 5 hardest go-kart tracks that we go to every year. But two, it added a little bit of strategy as well. And I think Emery can kind of allude to this more because, Emery, I think you've driven this racetrack a couple more times than I have. But again, I think that just added to what we saw this weekend and why the racing was so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to further Alex's point, you're talking about 3 seconds of time evolution from the first time we saw KAs on the circuit back in 2018 to now in 2025. And beyond that, even from the last time, almost a second difference between the pole time of 47.85 from Eli Warren in 2025 versus 2022 with what Ray Silverante was able to do. So they were absolutely insanely quick this weekend. X30 saw, I think, upwards of half a second time evolution as well. So the track itself, a lot different than the last time we went there on the national scene and what we saw previously. And I think with that, the racing we got was absolutely phenomenal, like you mentioned. I mean, the grip differences all flying. Finally felt like a real racetrack with the amount of rubber marbles that was laid down. The kind of switchbacks weren't quite as prevalent as what we saw in years past, but they were still there for the taking, as we saw in the X30 race, as we saw a little bit of that as well in KA2. So, I mean, all in all, Caleb, I have to say, compared to route, you know, after watching some of the route races, you weren't totally off base, but I think it was more of just a complete difference in field. And as always on the national scene, in my opinion, Road America delivered some absolutely incredible races over the course of the weekend.
Agreed. And I think it delivered some pretty special moments. So, Alex, I know you prepared something for us, recapping a little bit of X30 Pro for Paulie and his big win.
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about Road America this past weekend without talking about, to me, one of the coolest moments we've seen in quite some time. From the moment Kart Chaser launched on, doing their live streams, got to see Paulie Massimino get his first X30 win at the IMA Grand Shootout. Since then, over 1,400 days later, he finally gets it done on a main event victory. So let's take a look back at what we saw this past weekend.
Wrong one.
That's the wrong one. Now let's put the right one on.
There you go.
There we go.
Turney needs an impossible feat. He's going to look. It will not be there in that corner. It won't be in the last turn. Paulie Massimino wins the Wisconsin Grand Prix.
Paul, I have to ask you, we saw the emotions there. What does this mean for you to see your son finally get it done in the X30 class?
Well, basically, he's beating the best in America that we race with every round. We beat a European, best in Europe, right? So I think my kid deserves some credit once in a while because I think he's a better driver than anyone gives him.
I agree with you, Paul. Thank you. Paulie Massimino, can you describe any way you can what this feels like right now to finally get it done at X30 Pro Senior?
Oh, it's amazing. I've been trying so hard. I've been coming so close so many times. And, we've been struggling with setup all weekend and slowly making gains, and then finally we got there. So I was lucky I was able to attack Norberg a little bit in the beginning, help bring everybody else in to see if we could shuffle them back a little bit. And then I actually had really good pace, so I was able to catch back up to Ryan after him and I shot off a little wide. And then, put my head down, started making passes. And then past Norberg, saw Joe was a little bit ahead. Saw that his kart was maybe looked a little loose, but made slow gains, and took the opportunity when I had it.
Race aside, I mean, walk me through behind the scenes what this looks like. You, Brandon Jarscrack, the rest of the crew working so hard back in North Carolina. I mean, how much work goes into this to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, these guys work so hard. I work so hard. My parents work so hard. So it's amazing. I'm so thankful to everyone under that tent. That's my family.
Thank you, Paulie.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say, for Paulie, for his dad, Paul, for his mom as well. I mean, huge, I think, result that was a long time in the making. He's obviously won over an OKN over at the Stars Championship Series, but I think for him to win on the X30 platform after trying for so long, it definitely, means a lot for him. A couple of other things as well outside of that. We saw Caden McQueen's ECD, I would say, looked very impressive this week. Talk about the SOTI team. Velocity, adding, 2 guys with a lot of experience into that team. I think weekend 1 may not have gone to, their expectations finishing on the podium, but even then they had, I think, a great weekend for 2 drivers that are, getting used to a new package, I would say.
Well, that win for Caden is coming. I know he's won on the rock side, but to win on a Kart Chaser stream on a broadcast is going to be there anytime, right? I mean, he was, to me, a couple of maybe mistakes on his part or just, KA racing away from a win this weekend. I mean, he was to me in that main event, the fastest driver pace wise. I think he was just kind of on the wrong side of things a couple of times. But it's no doubt that pairing of Velocity Racing by Sodi and Caden McQueen looks to be pretty strong. And obviously ZCD, we have a new ZCD. He's back. He looked good this weekend. I mean, there was a moment where I thought, like, man, he's actually going to go win this thing.
Absolutely. I mean, ZCD in the final, probably some of the best driving we've seen from an X30 in a couple of years. I think we saw ZCD took off a little bit of the weight between Trackhouse and now. Looks very racy, very competitive. And to see him at the front of the field, anytime ZCD's leading or in second or in third or around guys like Ryan or Joe, something's about to go down. Ended up with a avoidable contact penalty in the final that shifted him back to 6th. But for all intents and purposes, a podium run for him, for Alan Isambard as well. It's nice to see that's 2 straight national races that Alan has shown up with the Rocket Racing Company guys and put it in the front of the field for X30. And I think for a team that doesn't really have the contingent behind them, either on the X30 side or just in general, to be able to mix it up with the Joe Turneys, the Austin Garrisons, and the Ryan Norbergs of the world was super impressive as well this weekend.
You're muted, Caleb. It's one a show. It tends to happen.
Did this happen to me earlier already? Did I not unmute myself after the break?
No, you did. You did.
Okay.
I'm just saying it tends to happen. It tends to happen once a show,
All right. But I was saying, without further ado, we'll bring on our first guest of the night, Mr. Jamie Sieracki. Not too far of a travel for you, Jamie, and as well, a pleasure to have you on the show with us here tonight.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, no, it was nice. I got home and the sun was still up, so that was pretty cool. Different.
A little bit different, yeah. I mean, first of all, while it's fresh for you racing at home with the entire Franklin Motorsports operation, what would you say about the weekend? Whether it was, how was it for your team? What did you think about the weekend as a whole?
I think it was all right. I mean, I really like the facility. We don't get there as much this year. I've spent more time there with a few other projects that we're doing, but we're not there quite as often with the travel schedule and that, but I love it up there. I mean, the area is nice. The facility is beautiful. The town is great. The vibe is always really good. We had some, it was a little bit hot, but we had pretty good weather all weekend and that. And as far as our group goes, I mean, at the PKS series, we only have a couple of kids running. I mean, obviously we've focused a little bit with the younger kids this year as we kind of, obviously we've been kind of sunsetting the race team program over the last couple of seasons. So, sizing it down is normal, but, at an event like this, we had a few other people in the area that wanted to do it. So, I mean, we love having more people around, and mostly people in this area are people we know. So, it's kind of a friendly atmosphere. So I think, most of the guys had a good time. It was a big step for some of them. We had, our sportsman kids, in the mini class did pretty well. Cam kind of leads the charge, Johnson, in that category for us. So he's been doing really well. And we've had Simon Klein, who's on a Kart Republic, but he's been running with us through the Wisconsin races. and then Eric Wojciechowski. Those three have been in that category. And they did well. Eric's had a ton of improvement. He's only been racing for a year. Cam was obviously up front, finished in the top 5, won a heat race. So still kind of improving every step of the way. They all work with Jason Birdsell, who's always done a good job with that age group. And then we had a couple of micros. One micro, he runs up there, but he just started in the 2-stroke stuff this year. So Evan Leash, and he did pretty well. He got knocked around. So his big takeaway was like, man, it's more physical. We had another youngster, Darius Zaremba, who was like his second time driving a Swift. Well, he did a club race the week before, and he was within like 6 to 8 tenths of the front runners. So we're like, let's do this. It's a good experience. It's close to home. And we had others in there. Cash Perkins, who hasn't been running the whole series, ran in the senior category. He had good pace on and off. My son Brandon ran in the junior category. And another junior, Pearson Gulseth, from up there. We had a Masters with Eric Schumacher. So we had a nice mix of different people, which, like I said, at this series, it's been pretty small. But for a home race, it was good. It was a good vibe, and I think we had a good time. I've had a lot of fun with the group of people we've had at all the races this year, for sure. The staff members and the racers themselves.
It's trip number 9 to Wisconsin for USPKS, I believe. We've seen them go to Shawano. We see them go to Dowsman. We see them go to Road America. As one of the 2 or 3 kind of normal to big size operations that run in Wisconsin, how special is it to be able to run these weekends where it's at home for you at a series like USPKS?
Oh, it's great. I mean, you want to think you have a technical advantage. And for the most part, some of the drivers are much more comfortable because they're familiar with the circuits. But because we don't do every series, every race, every track. So when USPKS goes to a race, we haven't been there for 4 weeks prior to. The tracks up here, Road America especially, you can't really do that. Like they had IndyCar last week. So that was kind of cool because it levels it out a little bit. Even if you're there for route or previous, like the track changes, it evolves. They have other events going on in that. But it's anytime you're close to home, the only time I'm in my own bed is at Dousman, right? But anytime you're close to home, it's a huge, it's an advantage mentally because it's so much less stress, the setup, the tear down, the time away, and it's so much more manageable. So it's like, we're super blessed to have these circuits, these tracks that are just really nice, really well maintained, especially with the climate up here in the winter. They do an amazing job. I always tell when we come up to Wisconsin, everyone's like, what is there in Wisconsin? And I'm like, it's God's country, man. I mean, we got trees, we got nature, we got awesome racetracks. We got everything. We got your cheese, whatever, beer. So, no, it's great to be just that close to home.
Yeah. And it's been, at this point, you're going on roughly 30 years in the industry. You and George started when you were 11 in karts, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Wow. Good memory, Emery. So we started, I think, when I was 11 competing. By 14, I started doing engine work. And then my dad was selling parts and stuff just out of the trailer. So, it feels like 110 years, but yeah, I think you're right. It's about 31 years now, on the island here.
Yeah. And you jumped back in a go-kart again only 2 weeks ago. So from first race to last race is pretty much that entire time. How was that route race?
I thought it was all right. I mean, I hadn't really, I like to do a couple races a year just for fun and just to kind of stay connected to the technical things. I mean, at 45, you're not going to be competitive. If I get within like a half second or a second, if I'm a half second off, I'm like, my kart's so fast. Like any of those guys would be like 8 tenths faster than it, because I'm old and I'm out of shape. But I mean, it's fun to do this. I used to put a little more preparation into it. This year I did 25 laps leading up to the route race. So, but it's always fun to get in and to kind of be out there amongst these people you're watching, and you kind of have, you have respect for a lot of these kids and how often they're doing it and how well they're doing. And then you get out there and I mean, you can't turn off the competitive mode, and you're just like, you're struggling with this, that, or the other thing, and the frustration builds. And it's like, even afterwards though, you kind of exhale and it's like, yeah, it was still fun. Like, you're out there getting your brains beat in, mostly on your own doing, or because you're not keeping an eye on something mechanically. I had mechanicals over the weekend. I crashed. It was like I had years of racing in one weekend, and but it's still fun to get out and do it. Sometimes you got to remind yourself while you're doing those 80-hour weeks from time to time. And that's a good reminder. You still enjoy it. It's like that. It's worth it.
I can say that of the three of us, I'm the only one on the show that's lost to Jamie Sieracki in a race in Norway a few years ago.
I would have probably lost too. I mean, I don't think I'm the best at racing if I'm honest.
Emery probably broke. I'm pretty sure he probably broke if he lost.
No.
What's the story, Emery?
No, so this was 2018. It was WK at Norway. It was like the sword showdown. And basically, first time I'd ever been to Norway. Got in on Friday, practiced Friday. The Saturday main event, this is when they still had two finals. I got a bad start. I dropped from like 4th to 8th, and Jamie was in 7th. Pointed me by. The next lap, I drive straight through the hairpin, go off in the grass, lose like 2 seconds. Catch up. Lets me by again. I pass him again, the hairpin, straight off the track again. And then at that point, I was like, well, it's 4 laps to go in the race. Couldn't catch back up, finish behind them. So, and then afterwards, like Jamie talked to me at the time, and you were like, I let you by. I pointed you by, and you still just drove straight off the track. Like, what is going on here? So, no, but with that being said, I mean, you've been out of the seat a few years. You come back to a route race that a lot happened in front of you. There was some penalties. There were some scale line fights. There's a lot of stuff throughout the field. How different has the scene of karting been from now in 2025 to maybe a few years ago when you're more active in the seat?
Oh man, I mean, so like more active is like 20 years ago, but I mean, we always want to look back and be like, man, everything's changed. It's so different. These guys don't respect each other. They don't do this. They don't do that. And then you like really think about it and you're like, it's really not that different. Like we want to think it is, but like the fields are bigger now. The biggest difference is the fields are closer. It's like you could be 4/10 off 20 years ago and you'd be running like 8th. But then you can also come out the next session and you could pick that time up, whether it's just making a couple of adjustments on equipment or just like driving a little bit different. But you didn't have the infrastructure at these big races that's so readily available now to everybody. And so if you stunk, you stunk. Like that was it. Like you sucked that weekend. And maybe you got a little bit better, but there was nothing really there to kind of pick you up and show you exactly where you needed to improve. And then likewise, when you were good, it was like, and you were whooping everybody, it was like fat chance they're going to catch me over the course of 2 days. Like, so I think with everything being tighter, it just seems that everything's more intense. But I mean, I joke with some of the guys that we're working with now about like, hey, you remember that guy? You remember that time you punched that guy in the scales or when you ran that guy off the track? And you laugh about those stories. And then you have to think about them when you're like, man, it's so rough out there. It's so different. It's like, man, really, it's not. Like, we might view it different because you mature, but I mean, it's not that different, like that intensity and stuff. And things have changed on track because, there's more body work. So it's different, but it's like, people go, well, it's rough because there's body work. I'm like, not a lot of people flip now, man. Sometimes it was like 4 flips in a weekend. So tell me that it wasn't rough 25, 30 years ago when we had those incidences. Maybe the leaning and the minor stuff is at a lot higher volume right now. Sure. But the equipment lends to that. Some of the pressures from outside, I think, lend to that a little bit, but it's not the Grand Canyon is not the void between, that's for sure.
So you associate the fields being closer now to the readily available like information that now teams and drivers have?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I see people that are new and they're getting up to speed quickly, and it's super impressive. It can be frustrating too at times as someone with experience because you're trying to wrap your head around what you've done and how you've progressed. And then somebody that comes in and then like within a year, they're really close to you. And it's like, whoa, it took a lot longer, but it's different. Like they took a different route, or they did more events with this type of attention. And, that gets down to the financial side of it, like what you're capable of doing and what program you're capable of running in. These programs, they are amazing. Like when I look back from 20, 30 years ago, what these teams can accomplish with drivers now, it is super impressive. And I mean, there's an industry, almost a separate industry created off of it. And for good reason. I mean, these guys are borderline miracle workers in certain situations.
What has been like the number one thing that you've noticed when like developing a driver, doing like little workshops at different racetracks? What's been the number one thing that you're like, that drivers, in their early stages need to work on the most? Or is it different between drivers?
It's always different. And I don't follow along with them as much anymore. I used to coach a lot more, do a lot more one-on-one stuff. And now I like to go like the first day or first couple days with somebody, like, hey, now I've got this guy. And we've been doing a school at Road America, which is awesome, right? It's for new people and people with limited experience. So I like working with them at the early stages because it's real fulfilling, right? And you get a lot of progress out of them in a short amount of time, but it's totally different though, each person. Some of them, it's like, wow, that kid's like, we got to dial him back because he just doesn't know how to use the brake. And then you got this kid over here who's just like afraid to hit the gas. And then you've got another one who is just driving like on the complete, wrong side of the track all the time. So it's different with everyone that you get. So the neat thing is having the recognition of where the biggest chunk of time is that you can get for them in the shortest amount of time. So most of the time I spend with drivers now is either at a 5-hour school or maybe a 4-hour one-on-one lesson. Or we come out of like a lesson or a school and we do a couple of club races and we're just kind of like working on the very entry level things with them, but it is different for every driver. So, but the ones that have the potential, like you'll watch, I'll watch a kid and within like 3 laps, I'm like, when we do the school, we break up into groups, and my brother-in-law, Steve Welk, who's a longtime karter, but also does a lot of spotting and different race series and that. And, so we're doing the school and I'll watch and I'll be like, yeah, that kid's in my group. I'm taking that kid right there. You just tell because like you hear the footwork or you see them in the lead follow and they don't want to stay in line, right? They're falling back and they're speeding up and you're just like, yeah, that kid, like that one's got some potential. But yeah, they're all different. And like the first time I went to the track, I took Cam Johnson to the track. It was like, yeah. And Eric Wojciechowski, I think he finished 9th or 12th this weekend, but he's only been in it for a year and he's getting really good pace. And he was another one where I was like, oh yeah, he's got some stuff. Now it's changed with all the indoor stuff and the electric kart stuff. So, that's helped out immensely. So some of the kids come out of there and they've got some really bad habits to work on. And some come out of there with the ability to just like get close to the limit or their limit right away.
Well, a lot of it's seat time, right? For me, like more than any other sport, racing is how many times can you get behind the wheel testing, driving versus, taking big gaps between each session. That's at least how I've always felt, right? You got to get in the cart and just drive.
Yeah. You've got to be able to get in, but taking what somebody's giving you is what's huge. And that's where, like I said, I think some of these teams, they do such great work because if the driver's comprehending it, and can go out there and execute. So execution's tough. Some of the guys comprehend it and we watch and they'll just they're doing the same things over and over. They come in, you have them repeat it back. They repeat it back correctly. They go back out and they just can't execute it. And that's where laps will help. Right. And then there's some kids that they can grasp it and execute it right away. And so laps might be less important for them. So at that point you're like, okay, now we need quality laps. Like let's start racing or doing some stuff right away. The other guy might be like, hey, they're going to get to that same point. They just need more laps, maybe solo laps to try to start executing some of these things you're trying to put in their head or get them to accomplish.
So on the topic of like, you work with them at these schools, you bring them to a club race when you think they have potential. How much of a role do you play or like a hand do you play in maybe somebody doesn't have just yet the talent, but maybe they have the budget and they want to go out there and they want to go national racing year one. Are you kind of pumping the brakes and saying, let's start club, go regional, go national, or do you kind of just let them figure it out on their own?
Well, it's hard to say. Because if they show some ability and you're like, hey, look, here's the deal. If you really want to do it, you can do it, but you have to be realistic with the expectations you're going to get. Look at I try to get, especially people early on when they want to do these events, which sometimes I'm like, well, if you want to start within the first year, that's kind of a big task. But if you set the expectations in a realistic manner and you also look to teach them to gauge their performance or to look at progress versus results. We are a results driven society, right? But the progress is what's going to get you there. So if they want to do it, you try to help facilitate it. But I mean, like I said, we're stepping back from that type of role. So, I mean, I don't mind guiding people like, hey, if you want to run, maybe call this guy or that guy. And we've had some of the kids running with, I know they've run with Parallel this year at events we're not at. And, Josh Holtz is in the area and he's got a great program. Depending where they are logistically, maybe these are things that we can help guide them to after we kind of get them in that first step in and kind of see where they're at and what they want to do. But my recommendation is always ease into it with some regional or local and then maybe regional and national. But like I said, I took a kid this weekend, put him in the micro class, and it was like his 5th race. Now he had done some fat kart stuff. He did a lot of indoor stuff. He's only 8 years old. And I think it was a good experience. He made mistakes, but we went in prepared. I said, look, it's not about how you finish. We just want to see how your kid responds to this type of event because he's got some potential. And so I think it was a good experience. And in the final, he went a half second faster than he went all weekend. And he was like within a second. And I'm like, that's really good. Now let's go. Okay. All right. What do we got to do? This is where we want to be. What do we got to do to get there properly now or to be ready for it? Because, we're not going to travel across country with somebody that new, but, if it's local, we can give them that experience and then they can kind of see where they're at. But the expectations for sure have to be realistic. And then, you try to build a plan for them, even if it excludes yourself from it, but build a plan to get them where they want to be.
So then on that topic, right, I've never asked this on the show before, but it's been more and more of kind of like an epidemic, I guess you can say, where you bring up expectations, right? So like, let's say somebody's new to the sport. Maybe they're not ready to go national racing, but they can afford to do it. So you set the groundwork of, hey, here's what's probably going to happen. And if you learn to love the process, it'll be okay. So with that, maybe people don't have the budget. So, okay, you go club or regional racing. What's kind of like your viewpoint of, say, like a team bringing in like a powerhouse driver to just test on a club or a regional weekend, maybe a couple drivers, and all of a sudden that regional becomes a super regional, right? Where you just brought this kid who's now finally got to the point where he can go regional racing. He's got to race against 5 of the guys that race on the national scene. So all of a sudden now his best chance is maybe P6 instead of P1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really look down at that because if they've checked the boxes at the club level to kind of step up and we go, well, now that regional is like a national, well, then where do they go after club if they want to test the waters for something new? So I love regional racing because it is kind of a melting pot of the top level and guys that are just, they might be dominating at the club, but they're going to be a back marker there the first couple of times. So I like it because you can test yourself in regional racing. I mean, technically regional is a geographic type deal, right? So it's closer to home. So it keeps the cost down. And I think that's something we overlook. I mean, so often everybody's so focused on the 200 drivers that keep showing up to the national races. We're not really thinking about the feeder program. And, I'm one of those guys that's like, why don't we have 500 people at these races? Why aren't we running heat races in all the classes? Why aren't we running 5 classes with 100 entries in each of them? Right. And it's kind of gotten to a point where we're limiting the participation because of some of the costs and stuff. Where the regional, they can still run against those guys, but it usually is at a lesser cost. And travel's a lot of it. How many days they're on track is a lot of it. I think those things help keep people engaged, and it doesn't shy them away if they're not looking at a 5-digit weekend.
Yeah, I actually want to dive into the cost function a bit because I feel like you have kind of a unique perspective as someone that now has kind of a bit of a scaled back team in the mid 2020s. 10 years ago, you had one of the biggest teams in the karting paddock, maybe not every year, but certainly if you're looking at the numbers, you had up to 15 to 20 karts in your tent at one point. And in the early to mid 2000s, you also had a presence on the national scene as well. So at each of those eras, how much has the cost evolved both on the driver's side and on the team side in terms of the difficulty of getting everything lined up logistically from weekend to weekend?
Well, I think, obviously the costs escalate, right? The costs escalate. If nothing changes, the cost is always going to escalate because the cost of living is going up. Everything's always on the rise. I look at it now, and part of the reason we scaled back is because we have a lot of different facets of our business. And if that one became too large, it started to take away from other things. but it wasn't quite to the point where we can sustain a set of employees strictly for it. Right. And I've always wanted to be more hands-on. I'm horrible management, right? I'm going to micromanage everything, or I'm just going to get in and do some of it myself. And that's, to my own fault. Right. But at that time, everything was a little bit less. The cost of the equipment, everything was a little bit less. But and then as things evolved, I started looking at what was coming down the pipe, and it's like, holy cow, like tents, so I got some tents, and I hate those tents. Like, I hate setting them up. I hate tearing them down. I hate maintaining them. But I'm like, you kind of need it. And I'm like, I looked at it and I was like, it's great. When I go to the hotel at night, I don't worry. Everything's good because everything's super secure and it's really nice. Okay, that's worth it. What about a truck versus a semi? Well, if you put more people in there, it amortizes the cost. Worth it, if you can get to that point. So I look at some of the teams that are the highest expense with all the nice things, and I do these breakdowns, and people are like, that's crazy. That's too much. And I'm like, yeah, it's a ton of money. Like, I can't fathom it. Like, a few races is like my salary, but I'm like, but I've done the breakdowns, and these guys are pretty fair when you start looking at all the expenses that go into it, and the personnel and the travel and the preparations and that. So I can't really find a team where people go, it's super expensive. Is it better? I'm like, I don't think you're getting ripped off, man. Like I said, you put us, I live and die with the Excel spreadsheet. Right. And I'm like, that tells me that it's a lot of money to do this stuff. But when you look at everything that they provide and that's included, I'm like, they're just doing a really good job. And if they have the clientele for it, why not do it really nice? So I think, the cost has changed, but also what's provided with it. So if everything's gone up 8%, but the cost has gone up 150%, like it probably has, maybe more, it's not just, hey, we're going to make money and this is great. They're adding all these other things, which gets back to tightening up the level of competition. So all these things that they are adding are making it tighter, which means they're doing a good job because the slow guys are getting faster. So the sky's the limit with what you want to spend, but everybody's just got to kind of be in their comfort zone on that. But I do feel like it has limited the size of some of these big events for sure. And it's not just teams, it's the amount of days that we're on track, all those things add to the cost pool. And, pretty soon, you're looking at guys spending a lot per weekend. And there's a lot of people that go, hey, I'd like to do it, but I just can't do it at that level. So I'm going to pass, and I'm going to go, hopefully to the regional level and maybe race against some of the same guys.
Yeah. Is there anything over the course of the next 5 to 10 years that you feel like could maybe you're not going to bring the cost down on a national level? I feel like we've had this discussion a number of times, whether it be in the paddock, in the show, everything in between. But is there something that you would do if you were the emperor of all of U.S. karting to maybe make it more lucrative for teams or more lucrative for customers to be on a national program?
I don't really know. Race promotion really intrigues me, and, I could see getting involved in it a little bit more, maybe a little more aggressive. I try to assist with different programs now, usually at a sponsorship level, but, we do that sword race every couple of years. So we kind of pump it up and we try to put something on. So that stuff really interests me. And maybe, as we shift directions in certain things, that might be something I dabble with more. But until you really sit down and look at it, it's hard to say where you can find benefit for those teams. I think what we're missing on that stuff is involvement from outside of karting, but you have to have a sellable product. And I think like you guys, the whole Kart Chaser program can bring about that sellable product. And I've had a couple of short conversations with Xander, and it's like, man, you guys really hold some keys that might actually be able to integrate more outside interest in karting, which, the more eyes you have, the more potential for sponsorship or for advertising opportunities, let's say, for different types of companies and different people in that. So when that happens, then I think you'll start seeing some advantages that the series can kind of hand down to the teams. And, maybe they have some sort of kickback or maybe they just, a lot of them now it's like, oh, we can save here and there. And well, pit space, that's something that affects everybody. Right. So when you see some of the series bringing that down, I think PKS brought it down last year a little bit, and it's like, yeah, it's great. It doesn't really move the needle a lot though. But, I think they're doing the best they can with what they have. But again, that's why I think it's more important to find a way to bring more people in. And the classes, if they're bigger, I think that helps, but some people get really shied away from big classes and the heat racing formats and stuff like that as well. And, the amount of times I get here a 50-50 on, we want 2 finals a weekend. And it's like, but what about one big event? It kind of raises the level. So you kind of get a lot of mixed opinions on even at that level, from how the series put on their races, the formats that they use. So like, how could they kick back and work with the teams more? I think just, being a good listener to the teams, I think is huge.
What would be your ideal race weekend if you were in that race promoter, seat?
I think temp circuits probably pose a big advantage, because I think it would be cool to have like a 3-day weekend versus stretching it out. Now, if I'm a team, I want a 5-day weekend. I want 5 weekends in a row at the same place, right? And I totally sympathize with that, because that helps them drive their costs down for their drivers, or it allows them to make more profit. Which, I mean, look, if you're doing 4 or 5 weeks straight, you should. I mean, that's a big grind. But I think shorter races, I don't know what appeals to the drivers anymore. I'm old and like, you don't know what some of these parents and some of these kids would be into. I think it's cool to be like, hey, go to a track or something that people aren't at. And then just like, you get 3 sessions and it's go time. Like, let's do more racing. So maybe Thursdays move in, and maybe Friday you do like 2 rounds of practice and then you qualify. And if you have less classes, but you got runoffs, maybe you get a heat race in, and then you just run heat races on Saturday, and then you build up to the one big final. And, this weekend's kind of like that, in the bigger classes, you got 3 heats, but less practice. And I think with all the infrastructure we have with the teams, like, hey, the teams, those big teams are going to shine. It's going to help their program, but less practice, it cuts the cost. It allows more people in. So the entryway is bigger because more people can afford to do it. And, like I said, if you can work it with some temp circuits or maybe some tracks where you change the circuits a little bit, I think that would be kind of cool. I was talking to a customer this weekend, and he's like, it'd be cool to have a Wisconsin championship. And we were like, yeah, it should be like 6 days straight, just in Wisconsin, but 2 days at Shawano, 2 days at Road America, 2 days at Dousman. And like, everybody drives down together almost, and you get like 4 sets of tires for the whole stretch, use them how you want. And, I was like, that's a cool idea. But I mean, it's like, what's going to stick with racers and what's going to bring entries in the door? And, because as a series, you have to sustain, you have to, have the resources to put on a good program too. So listening to the teams and the racers is your number one goal.
I feel like I don't know if you had something to add to that, Caleb, but on my end, I just feel like I'm on the same boat as you, Jamie. From talking to drivers, talking to teams, I don't even know what they want, right? Because on one end, right, we introduced the pro show for the pro guys. And then, we still have it, right, for Siragusa and for Stars. But, all of a sudden, what this grand idea was a year ago is catered more towards the drivers. And again, that's fine. But the idea of the pro show was to make it this big spectacle. And then the kickback to that was, well, the team said, listen, half the pro field are paying customers that want more track time. And to get more track time, you tend to add more practice or more heats. Instead of the 1 main, you get 2 mains. And then it's like, okay, but then again, now you're going back to making the pros equal to every other class. But I'm with you. I think that's my favorite thing about the Stars format. Friday practice, that's it. And I'd even argue it's too much practice. I like the 2 practice idea. 2 practice qualify. Go out there and qualify on a Friday. Throw in a heat on a Friday too. Why not? Right? So yeah. I'm with you. And I think we also raced a little bit too much. I think this weekend, I think 3 heats is the maximum a series should do. And if you do 3 heats, there's no pre-final. There's no reason to have 5 races in a weekend for 1 class, right? Because then it also drags the days on. And I'm going to give my props to USPKS because we were done at noon racing on Sunday, which is how it should be, right? Instead of super long Sundays where most people either have to get a flight Monday, which adds hotel costs, adds travel costs, adds a lot of cost instead of getting out there Sunday, right? But number 2, I mean, people after a long weekend, as much as we love racing, are trying to get out of there as quickly as they can, right? They don't want to pack up their trailer till 11 o'clock at night. So I think there's a lot to be said about what you're saying, and I'm in agreement with you. I'm just throwing out there the fact that, like, from what I've heard around the paddock, I don't really even know what people want nowadays.
Yeah, you get different feedback all the time, and they want laps, but then the weeks are too long, and like you say, they want races, they want a big show. And I think PKS's format's awesome, and Sunday feels big because you're going out there for one race, and then they want that big race, and then they're like, yeah, but we should have 2 a weekend. And then it's like, it's not a big race, man. It's just like any other deal. Like the clubs run 2 a weekend on the double headers, and so you're right though. It's like, what do they want? And if there's 200 people, you're going to get like 20 different answers of how to do it. So you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, I feel like our next topic is kind of on that same line, right? Of like, what do people want? What do racers want? What do series want? Here and there. But, news came out today out of Cup Karts North America and the integration of their point system with Race Select. Keith Warren is actually going to join us in 2 weeks to talk a little bit more about it after CKNA Summer Nats, which is this weekend, we're going to be at, and then Stars. But yeah, we'll go over the release here quickly. That's actually too small, so I'm gonna move it around here. But that being said, they pretty much, to summarize it a little bit, right? They're adding it with the help of Race Select. CKNA is integrating it here for this next weekend. We have the full rundown of the points as well, and then as well, TSRS is integrating it with Race Select and Keith Warren in 2-3 weeks time. Whenever we go to Crescent, Texas. This is something I think that's been in the conversation for quite some time, right? Of integrating a point system like this. I think it's super cool to see this being added. I'm a fan of it. I do think, looking at the points, which we are going to get into here in a little bit, I'm not, it is very new. And Keith says it here in this statement too, that there is going to be growing pains to this. It is going to get tried. But I'm personally, from my side, from a fan side of things, for waiting for something like this for years, I could date back to Casey happy hour episodes where, you heard Xander talk about this. You heard a lot of people in the industry talk about this. I want to hear from you, Jamie, right? Seeing this, point system now integrated, what are your kind of initial thoughts?
Well, I applaud them for putting it into play because, I've been around different series for a long time. And sometimes you'll talk to some of the promoters or the race officials and that, and they're like, oh man, this guy again. Oh, we always have a problem. And it's just like, well, this might help with that, right? Because they can only get in trouble so many times. The stuff carries over. I think it's huge. I think there's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some tweaking that has to be done. But I think it's something as often as some of these people are racing under kind of the same jurisdiction, I think it's important that something like this starts to get some momentum, and I think it'll, people, they're going to make decisions differently when they know they're at risk of maybe missing some races, and again, some series are like, they don't want to turn anybody away. They're worried about pissing off one guy because they give him a penalty. He's not going to come to the next race. It's like, if you need that one entry that bad where you're going to tee off 4 or 5 other people because you got the same person causing problems or making the same mistakes that are costing positions or places for other people. This is a good answer to that. And again, there'll be growing pains. There's going to be some tweaks, but you got to start somewhere. You got to stop talking and you got to start doing.
Yeah, here we'll actually take a look at the points here as well, see if this is a better angle for us. But yeah, this is kind of the way that the point structure looks like. To me, we talked a lot about Emery, Alex, and myself. We talked about, the swerving, which is, I think, one of the biggest ones, and avoidable contact being 4 points down to swerving, which is 3 points. Thoughts on that a little bit? We've obviously I think swerving's been the biggest thing, right? That we hate to see in our sport and that we don't want to see in our sport. So I think, me personally, I'd like to see a little bit heftier penalty for that. And I think avoidable contact, stuff like that happens from time to time. It's all due to interpretation, I think.
On my end, I think there's a couple of things that stand out to me, right? And I'm in agreement with everything that's been talked about so far. This needs to happen. Every series needs to adopt this at some point, right? And the goal, ideally, would just to be like a super license situation, right? Where like every kart race is the same, right? Like it should not be where you can go out there and destroy somebody in one series, gather these points, get disqualified from an event because you've accumulated a lot of points, but then go to a different series and be perfectly fine. That's just me. But like looking at the point structure, right? And again, like as mentioned on the Facebook post there, like this will get revamped, it will get reworked. It's up for, discussion. That's what we're doing right here. Me personally, swerving, like you said, Caleb, 3 points, most like it's a little too low, right? For swerving to be under avoidable contact, right? I think swerving, for how prominent of an issue it seems to have been over the last 2 years that it's been on the forefront of discussion. It needs to be more than 3 points. It needs to be one of, if not the heaviest weighted, if we really want to put our foot down on this cannot be allowed. Because 3 points to me, I mean, I don't want to go out there and say that I'm condoning swerving. But if I know as a driver that it takes 25 points to get disqualified from the event, what's 3 points if I have 0 going into a weekend, right? That's the way I look at it. And like, it's a terrible way to look at it, but for how bad swerving is, that's the way that a lot of drivers are going to look at this, right? So then you look at unsportsmanlike conduct, 15 points. Good. Swerving should be right up there. It should be a punch to the gut, right? That's what it should be. That's just me. I think a lot of these other ones look pretty good. I understand, like, as harsh as it may seem, losing equipment 4 and 6 points, that's just part of the rules, and it's a safety thing. So I think it has to be up there in points. Jump starts being one, like that happens, like Caleb said, just certain things happen, right? Avoidable contact happens, especially in a CKNA race where things are so close. But in certain situations, you have to look at some of these points brackets and be like, what's the thing that can cause the most damage? And that needs to be right up there at the top. 15 points, 10 points. Swerving should be there too.
I actually just got a text from Keith, who's watching on at home, and his words were all this is already under discussion after being released. So that's good to hear, right? Like,
that's great.
People talking about it, us talking about it, and going back to the drawing board. It's like, all right, like, what can we tweak on? So yeah, he's. I like this. I like this a lot. Jamie, anything else to add? I think before we, I guess, move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the catches on something like this over the years is like, well, how are you going to catch all of it? And I think the advent of cameras that we're seeing more and more at different tracks and different series, I think helps strengthen this whole type of program. So I think utilizing all these different forms of technology that are improving the officiating and kind of using it together for these different types of programs is going to make it more effective. And then I agree with you guys, like swerving. Look, I did it last year to a driver, and it was super embarrassing because, like ran into me and knocked me off the track, and I got on, and I was like, I did that. And I'm like, I spent most of this race watching people do it, and you kind of get caught up in the moment. And it's like, I didn't race the rest of the year because I was like, man, that was embarrassing. I'm not going to go back out there. I mean, some of those things should be weighted heavily. And like you said, like Alexander said, I mean, that is something that is fully intent. Even if you blacked out while you did it, but I mean, it was something that wasn't done because you were catching your cart or whatever. It was like you made an attempt to mentally, mess with somebody, or maybe, if you make contact, then that's just driving into somebody. That should be a big one, and it applies to, differently to all these different listed rules. But yeah, anything with intent should be weighted heavier, but they're going to work on that. They're going to get rolling with it. And maybe with the cameras too, it'll allow them to make decisions on this point system after the events, even, somebody did something that didn't really get brought up, and, you got video evidence and you're like, that was bad. Like, I know it was for 20th, but that was bad. And that guy should get some points. So I think it'll be a good program as the years go.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up on this that's kind of related to the entire system that I'm curious how it gets addressed is someone that is racing 2 classes. Say this past weekend you had Joe Turney, you had Paulie Massimino, Zachary Clemente. ZCD, in this case, based off of his actions in the K senior final where he picked up 3 avoidable contact penalties, his penalty in the X30 final would have put him over the 15-point threshold to disqualify him from X30, despite the fact that, if I remember correctly, that was the only penalty he got in X30 all weekend. How how do you officiate drivers that run 2 classes versus 1? And is that a consideration? Is something that I think I'm curious to see how that gets implemented. But
I feel like that's big in CKNA as well, right? You have drivers
yeah,
even doing
that's
3
exactly the point.
classes. So that, I think,
And
yeah.
is there kind of a counterintuitive point on it where if you're someone that's doing the triple and hey, like realistically, I might run in third and heavy, but in medium or light, I'm going to be maybe 10th to 15th. Do you risk running those other 2 classes if you know that, hey, it's CKNA racing, a lot of elbows out driving, a lot of potential to get 3 or 4 penalty points in a heat race? Do you take a step back and only run one of those classes? I think, and in that case, does the series limit it to being by class or by driver? Because that, to me, is an unintended kind of after effect of this that might, at least on the national scene with K and X30, it's one thing, but certainly in CKNA races, it's going to be fascinating to see if that has any impact.
That's a great point. I mean, but I think you're out. If they're points for the driver, it's points for the driver. If you enter the classes, you run the risk. You got to be a little bit cleaner. Now, you can get into a licensing program when you get into the pro and the semi-pro, but it seems like those classes are so blended that it's probably the same. Just go, you go with the driver. And they're making the decisions out there.
I think the coolest thing about it all is I just got confirmation from Keith as well, is that this is free for any series that is using Race Select. So if you're already a series or a club that has Race Select for your entry or software for the way you're doing things, like this is free for you to try and test out. So CKNA, they're on Race Select. I know TSRS is on Race Select as well. And those are the 2 series. Again, we're going to see this happen this weekend and 2 weeks from now. But moving to our last topic here, Jamie, past couple of weeks, I think first I heard of this was back for the first round of Siragusa when we were here in Houston. We talked not as much, I would say, in Cincinnati, but I heard it again this weekend where I think people were going even deeper into like looking at serial numbers and stuff like that of tires, right? This new iteration of MG tires. We know it's been difficult for a lot of people to kind of get into the groove of or learn of, being a new, I think more, they say, is it synthetic? Is synthetic the right word? Am I using the right word? Or real? I don't know. What am I? Or I guess a better rubber is. Am I on the right page here, fellas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your kind of what's been your thought process about this? What have you seen? What have you learned from the new iteration of the? I think it's the SKH2 tire, which is what it is now.
I mean, it's progression, whether it's how they're making the tire or the materials they're using, I think. But, we talked a little bit earlier, and being able to maintain consistency, I think there's a range that they fall in. And you might get a complaint maybe if somebody has one end of the spectrum to the other. But for the most part, it's probably not that big of a deal. But, I mean, there's no getting around it. There's going to be variances. Everything that's built has a tolerance. So it's just a matter of, again, are you getting something that's at one end of the tolerance and then the other? Nothing's perfect in production. I mean, you see CNC machines making errors, on certain things from time to time. So, how things are made, I'm sure the ambient temperatures, how quickly the line moves or whatever, you're going to have some variables in there. And I think there's much worse situations. And over the years, there's been probably bigger variances and deviations in them. So yeah, maybe guys are seeing some, but I think in the grand scheme, looking back over the years, it's still we're still pretty lucky on this side of the industry to have it more minimized, but it does make a difference. You have something and your setup might change or that, but you just got to stay on top of it. But I feel like the newest tires have worked more. I feel like the rubber buildup is a little bit more. I know Badger last year completely transformed after PKS. Road America kind of transformed this weekend. So, I'm sure stuff's different, or it's just the temperatures. We got hot temperatures this weekend. But I like when the rubber goes down and works into the track. I think the karts do more like they're supposed to. You can see more with the karts. You can watch, how the karts move and react when that grips down. So, I mean, I like evolution, and I like when things are changed, like on a scheduled change, because then it's like hitting the reset button, and you got to relearn it. You got to redo it. You know, the big teams will have an advantage, but it's still kind of like a fresh start for everybody when they do have those periods or those cycles where they go through.
Yeah. And on the variance talk too, I think it's important to note that if you look across the other side of the pond, there's been a lot of controversy this year with Dunlop and kind of the FIA karting championships and what we've seen in terms of tire variance for them. So on the spectrum of like, we're not talking about delaminations, we're not talking about like tires completely falling apart. This is entirely kind of relatively minor discrepancies, I would say, even to take the people that have been criticizing them, it's not a safety concern, it's not a like massive competition imbalance. And you know, I've had a few discussions with people over the course of the last few days about this, and I think there's some that are more convinced than others that there's been a little bit of a quality control issue this year compared to recent years. But as a whole, I think that we're in a good spot on the US. MG has been essentially the main tire distributor for the last 8 years in American karting. And the fact that this is maybe the second time that this has been even remotely brought up discussion is a huge positive for the brand and for karting as a whole in our country.
Yeah, they've been a big improvement for the sport. You know, and like I said, we're fortunate to have that type of stability and consistency. Variances happen, but like it's pretty minimal. And like you said, with the quality of the stuff's been good too. Like even, you know, the MG, the Vega, those tires are both run. I mean, we move a lot of tires through our store, like over the course of a year. And I can always count on probably one hand how many people are like, hey, I had one delaminate, or I've got one that's leaking. You know, I've had one tire leak this year. That was kind of a defect. And I think I had someone talk about they had a tire that delaminated. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's the weather and maybe the pressure and the combination. And most of these guys know what they're doing. So I kind of truly believe like, yeah, okay, it's a fluke, but I don't mind. I mean, it's like there's a lot of tires that go through, and to have 5 or less issues annually that's pretty stellar. I mean, there's a lot more mainstream stuff that have bigger issues than that for sure.
Yeah, well, Jamie, you know, we're reaching the end of our time here together. I have one more question for you on my side. You know, you obviously spent a lot of time growing up racing with your dad. Now you're getting to share that with Brandon as well, your son, who's been very busy racing as well this year. I think a little more this year than he was last year. But how's it been, you know, sharing it with the family, you know, because I know you guys have y'all's trailer open as well. How's it been sharing, you know, this business now with your son and with your family?
I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, when we travel, so my daughter is not really into racing. She's into gymnastics. She's 12 years old. So she's, you know, this isn't like what she really enjoys. But when she comes and Michelle's there, it's totally complete. It makes everything so much easier. But I get it. It's not always fun for them. Brandon enjoys it. Michelle does it as a job. But I mean, it's great to go, you know, this year, you know, this weekend was probably one of the first weekends I've spent a little more time with Brandon, and I'm having a hard time. I don't really need to be there for stuff, but I'm still having a hard time separating myself from, you know, kind of what's left on the team side stuff. We have good guys there doing the work, and like they laugh, like they could care less if I'm there or not. So, but I'm finally trying to direct a little more attention because he's been he loves doing it. He has fun, and there's moments he does really well. And like this weekend, he had a great weekend. And, you know, I could tell he was super nervous going into Sunday, not because of, you know, starting front, back, or in the middle, but because he had good pace, you know, throughout the heat. So, you know, there was a little anxiety there, and I felt that with him. And like at one special moment, he's like, Dad, did you ever get nervous before races? And I was like, yeah, like all the time. I said, but it's like once you pull out there, what you do in that moment to shut it off, you know, that's going to make or break your race if you dwell on that nervousness. But so, I mean, I'm looking forward to being more active with him instead of just him there driving and racing while I'm there working. So, and, you know, he's going to be 14 at the end of August. And I feel like I've really, you know, he hasn't gotten the attention that I would really have loved to spend with from that young age that we've given to other people and help facilitate for other people. So hopefully he does it a few more years and we can enjoy that time. And this weekend was slightly different in a good way. And it was, you know, a little more special.
Oh, nice. At the end of our shows, we give our guests a little bit of time to promote themselves. What you guys coming up, where they can find you, if people want to race for you out in Wisconsin. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, FranklinKart.com. I mean, that's we do a lot of advertising. We don't need to self-promote. We try to get new people in. That's been our goal this year with the driving school at Road America. So you can visit the Road America website too to see that. We do arrive and drives, and again, we're trying to do more locally, less on the big stage. There's awesome groups, awesome programs at those national races that people can partake in. And if you want to do that, call those guys. I mean, we refer people to different teams all the time, depending where they're at. If you have new people that are interested in it, that's where we want to come in, and we want to get new people in. That feeds the whole pipeline for all the industry members. So, that's from parts and service to schools and coaching, on a local level, that's really where we're going to continue to put our focus in to help grow the sport for everyone involved.
Awesome. It's really been a pleasure to have you on. We've been planning on this, working hard to get you in. And honestly, I've enjoyed this past hour, getting to talk to you, getting to chat with you. And I know the boys have as well. We really appreciate you for coming on tonight, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. You guys are doing a great job promoting the sport. And it's a different view on this side of the screen, but it's great to be a part of it tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Have a good night, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys as well.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
There you guys have Jamie Sieracki. Quick commercial break from our side. Jake Drew joins the show here in a couple of moments.
Are you looking to take the next step in your racing journey? Well, look no further than PitFit.
With 2 locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Indianapolis, Indiana, PitFit trains drivers all the way from grassroots level karting to IndyCar and NASCAR, with top-of-the-line personalized coaching to improve physical and cognitive fitness.
For more information on programs, check out PitFit on Instagram or Facebook today.
Hey, what's up, Caleb? What's up, Brandon? You sound defeated. A long day at the office?
Yeah, got stuck at a cat food marketing meeting for like 3 hours. I don't know a thing about cat food, and I don't even work in marketing. And then I got sent on a coffee run like I was some sort of intern. Then at the end of the day, when I want to go get gas, I just realized everything is so darn expensive nowadays, man.
Yeah, you got that right.
Like, do you have any idea how much we're spending on Netflix?
That's like $20 a month.
Do you know how much we're spending on cable?
That's like $50 a month.
And you know what isn't expensive?
Tell me.
Kart Chaser Premium. For only $9.99 a month, you can watch all of the American karting action live from coast to coast. Subscribe and become a member today.
Welcome back here to KC Grid Talk. Jake Drew is going to join us here right after this quick little highlight reel.
U.S. win on our KC National Tour. Could it be today? Green flag in the air. 48 drivers from KA Senior for the Wisconsin Grand Prix are underway up to the hill. Front right now, Caden McQueen, your leader, to Massimino as they go side by side for third. Lemke through, Drew through, Kaminsky through. Things because he said it at yesterday's afternoon presser that this one is going to be a dogfight. The Briggs and Stratton-based organization with over 250 drivers on the list there as the action continues in less than 6 days. But the action right now is hot, and we've got another new leader. Jake Drew and Keegan Kaminsky, GFC and Formula Works to the top. We've touched on Drew, but Keegan Kaminsky is the outlier of your top 5. And this year, this has been a breakout year already with a lot of speed, a lot of pace, and now he's taking it to the lead.
Yourself, and then you find areas within yourself that you're not as good as you could be, and you improve.
Oh! Jake Drew through the dirt.
Is about to let McQueen go because Clement Mello has got a nose cone problem. That's easy to see, and we've got a new leader. Has come over to watch the karting when their circuit isn't being used. This is the reason. This is because it is so close, so competitive. And what's this now, Xander? We got another chopping and changing of positions. You can't take your eyes off it for a split second.
Brandon Lemke, the hometown kid. Jake Drew, the California native for GFC, trying to make a big-time play here in Turn 2A. He'll go back to the lead, and now Paulie Massimino and the rest of the pack inch ever closer. But Jake Drew, he was so ecstatic this year to have another opportunity to get to drive more than once or twice with the GFC squad. And while maybe not every event has gone as perfect a plan as they would have liked out of the final turn, Jake Drew wins the Wisconsin Grand Prix.
Well, with that, we got to see Jake Drew, how he got it done. Let's add the man himself. Jake, welcome on, bud. You're muted, by the way.
Hey, Jake, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. I was copying you. I've been watching for a while, all right? I'm trying to get it all figured out. But no, thank you guys for having me on here. Super excited. Ready to talk to you guys for a little while.
How are you feeling, man? Has it sunk in yet? Honestly, I was talking to Alex a little bit. I was up on top of the hill this weekend working a camera, but I got chills. You know, I've known you for quite some time. These guys have known you for quite some time. It was a really cool moment, you know, watching from a fan side of things. Has it sunk in yet? You know, you're a national race winner here this year.
Yeah, it's definitely started to sink in, and it feels really good. And you know, today we were kind of back to normal a little bit, back at the shop, prepping for a Tri-C event this weekend and making sure we had everything squared away. But no, it was really good to see Tony again. I know we were apart for a long time, a whole day, I think it was. So I spent a lot of time with those guys now, but definitely coming home to see family and enjoying it, letting it sink in, and answering all the texts and messages has been really cool. And for sure, it's been a long time since I got to have that feeling of winning something big like that. And, you know, kind of just going through the whole last lap, looking back, knowing it was clear and everything, and not having to defend, but just knowing that, you know, in a couple seconds I was going to be winning something big again. And it felt really good, and definitely helps. I don't know. You put in so much hard work with the team and everybody, and so many coaching days with drivers, and so many long, hot weekends all across the country here and there. And it makes it all feel really good when, you know, it's all coming together and everybody's hard efforts work out and you get to bring home good results. And icing on the cake was a 1-2 with Keegan and I. That was really special for him and I. We've grown really close over the last few years. So just really happy where everything's at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at this point, like you mentioned, a lot of years working with GFC, a lot of years working with guys like Keegan. I mean, you had a car career going in NASCAR for a few years, obviously with the ARCA West stuff, ultimately moving into trucks in 2023. I mean, I just want to know, starting the year, I guess, like 2020 or so, how's the last 5 years looked like for you, both on the car side and then also on the karting side?
Yeah, it's been a lot of moving around for sure. 2020 was when I first started to kind of dip my toes into the car scene and whatnot, and all that kind of stemmed from my karting as well. I had met the Brancati family who helped me out with my intro to late model stuff and Arca West and whatnot, and part of that was help from Tony Siragusa as well, and running with Formula Works, and just being able to connect with so many great people and networking throughout the paddock was really what kind of kickstarted all that. And um, obviously from there it was a quick progression into the ARCA stuff beginning in 2021. So I went from a 350-pound go-kart to a 3,000-pound stock car, and just less than a year really when we started to test and everything. So and then that turned into a full-time job for 2 years. So a lot of hard work there, and I take a lot of pride in that too. Pretty much, every step of my career, even from being a young kid working in the garage with my dad to I spent some time working with Tony before in his shop on the karting side, and then working full time in the ARCA shop. I would go visit the truck shops and the TA2 shops while I was back in Mooresville. I've always been pretty hands on with everything, so that was really special. And then um, we kind of had a good year in 2022 where we won the championship, and we knew pretty early on that Bob was going to be shutting down the team, and um, I definitely was excited where I was with that and in my career, and with trying to push as hard as I could to get as far as I could. And um, was very thankful for good friends of mine, Nathan Martin, to open up his doors in Mooresville and allowed me to come live with him. And that made a big change in my career and allowed me to have the opportunity to move back into the hub of motorsports for NASCAR in Mooresville and move back there and really take as good as a shot as I could and really spend some time back there. And it was a big change for sure. It all happened really fast and it took a lot of sacrifice and um, I was just really happy with it all. But um, still was dabbling in karting here and there. Tony always had a door open for me, was welcoming to me if I wanted to work, mechanic, coach, drive, whatever it was. He was always wanting to help me out if any way I could, any way he could, and we always stayed super connected, and I'm super thankful for all that. And then we all know the car scene is hard and it takes a lot of financial backing and a lot of support from on all sides. And I just was struggling to kind of find those situations. And I'm starting to get a little bit older, we could say, for motorsports. I turned 25 this year and kind of felt like I needed to maybe take a step back and try to put some money away, put some money back in my pocket. And I had a lot of great people supporting me through my years car driving, but kind of wanted to be a little bit more independent. And Tony and Gary and GFC Formula Works, everybody had a great opportunity for me to come do some of the coaching side and as well still feed my competitive side that I wanted to keep racing. And so this year's been definitely a busy year, busier than my last few, even with the car stuff, but just having a lot of fun doing the coaching stuff and kind of getting back in the swing of karting things. I felt like I was probably a little rusty at the beginning of the year, but now really starting to feel like my true self where I was at, 4 or 5 years ago when I kind of took a step away.
What continues to fuel that competitive side?
Oh, I just don't think it's gonna go away. I mean, I started driving a go-kart when I was 5, and so I mean, I didn't really start racing then, but I'm year 19, 20 of driving, and it doesn't go away. Every day I wake up, it's the first thing I got to think about is driving something or trying to win something, and it's just something that's not gonna go away. And um, definitely enjoy being in close proximity and working with the kids and drivers that I work with while I'm even racing as well and kind of showing that maybe some of the stuff I talk about is true. And I think karting is just it's such a competitive sport obviously, and it's much more attainable than driving a race car sometimes. So it's a way I get to feed that edge and just keep pushing at it.
Yeah, and real quickly, I wanted to talk about the Formula Works program and what you've been able to do over the last few years. I mean, you have a long-standing relationship with Tony, but we talked about Keegan and him finishing second. You've done a lot of work with some of the other guys like Nico Sarfati, guys like Johnny Stamps as well, kind of thinking on the more regional level. I mean, how special has it been for you to see that program evolve from kind of when you maybe didn't fully leave karting, but you kind of took a little bit of a step back to now back in full swing in 2025, now seeing the work and the success that that program has had?
Yeah, it means a ton. I mean, I feel like I felt like coming in, I hadn't done a lot of coaching the last few years. I mean, only with, select few kids like Keegan and whatnot, and I worked with those guys, but I never really worked on like a real broad scale of drivers. And um, even during the off season, I'd already spent a lot of time in California, and we spent a lot of days at Adams or K1 learning these new tracks and doing a lot of drill days where we'd have, 6, 8, 10 drivers where we're working on all kinds of things, not just going out there and trying to go as fast as we can, but definitely working on the racecraft side of things. And then, I do a handful of races, a pro kart race here or whatnot. And you see all the results just start to flood in, especially early on in the year. And that really felt special. And, it feels good to kind of get a thanks here and there, or, feel that I'm somewhat making a difference. I don't know if I always am for sure or not, but when the results kind of stick out in front of you, it's really cool. And I think it all comes from the preparation too in the shop. Like I said, I take a lot of pride in that, and I work really hard there to make sure everything's prepared and ready, and um, that we don't have any issues when we go to the track. And but I gotta admit though, it definitely makes it hard. Like especially closer to home. When we're racing, when we have 6, 7 guys under the tent, and you're out there racing with them, and you kind of look around, and it's your teammate, but it's also somebody that you've been coaching the last few months. So one, it feels good that they're there, and then two, it makes it a little bit difficult to race with them too because you don't want anything to go wrong.
How competitive are you guys though under the tent with each
It
other?
gets it gets pretty competitive. I mean, we push each other pretty hard. Um, we don't really have a lot of conversations of like specifically working together. I mean, there's time and a place where maybe it's go time and we need to just kind of sit and hang out and work with each other for a second. But once we're up in the front, it definitely gets pretty tricky, some of the moves we try to make. And but we all try not to take it too personally. We all know that we're there to win. It's not, there's no team points. So we all just doing the best we can. And I mean, maybe we try to keep it to a level where, like I said, we don't make any mistakes or take each other out. But at the end of the day, we all work together as a team. We do the best we can, and if it comes down to the three of us, it's all fair and game, and it's going to be racing at the end of the day. Whatever happens, happens.
Talk a little bit about how this weekend came to be, because I look back at last year whenever we came to Wisconsin here for USPKS. Tony shows up with a Formula Works team. Jesus was here. I'm not sure what other drivers were here racing with Tony that weekend, but you were around actually on the big track at Road America racing TA2. You got the pole position there, set the track record. But what kind of brings you guys to do these one-offs, here and there, throughout the year?
I think some of it is development with some of our drivers. Last year, we took a big emphasis, or Tony took a big emphasis on taking some of his guys to new tracks that they hadn't been before, and just really pushing them to learn and push their skills to understand a new track and come to grips with it and do the best they can. And obviously, we didn't have a ton of guys come with us this time, but Keegan had taken some time there before, and as a second-year senior, we're still pushing him and myself as well, but just pushing ourselves to be the best we can and learn as fast as we can, and kind of take ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit and see what we can do. So, it was good to show the product off like that, but also use some of Keegan's experiences and kind of apply that and maybe try to do a little bit better than the time before. And I know Tony's got a couple tracks that he picks out when we're going over schedules in the beginning of the year that he favors and wants to go back. And it's got to be fun too. It's not always about the super competitive side of things. Sometimes it's just a place that we like being or an area we want to be in, and we want to go back and have a good time. And while we're there, we're racing go-karts, and hopefully we do well.
Yeah, talk a little bit about your relationship with Tony as well, because I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but seeing the reaction from the two of y'all at the end of the weekend, right? Like this picture, you sent me the whole folder that you got at the end of the weekend, but this picture to me stuck out, right? Talk a little bit about you and Tony throughout the years and what it's now been like having him as your boss now, right? Who you answer to day to day.
Yeah, I mean that's Uncle Tony for everybody, but he's been such a big help in my career, and everybody under the tent. He's always just wanting to help and do the best he can for everybody, and whether it's providing an opportunity, a work, a cart, or whatever, every step of the way, I feel like you can always go to Tony and ask him for advice or ask him about something, and he's going to have something good to tell you. And, it's really special working with him. I've spent some time with him. I've gone away. I've come back, probably 2 or 3 times now, just through different situations. And he's always got his arms open to everybody. And then, especially this year, just I spend so much time with him. And, when it's in the shop, the travel days, staying together at the races and whatnot, where you have lots of conversations on kind of on the work side of things, and then when I'm driving on the competition side of things. So there's tons and tons of conversations that we're always having, and he's probably seen my mood swings through the X30 stuff and whatnot, where I feel still trying to figure some things out there, but obviously have a little bit more confidence going into it now. But he's seen, it's hard to not have a little bit of a self-doubt too sometimes. I took a few years off, and maybe that's kind of where I'm lacking a little bit. But like I said, I kind of feel like I'm really getting back to my true self, and really looking forward to Indiana. So um, there was a couple like key moments and quotes throughout the weekend where I kind of was not calling my shot, but just trying to speak things into existence and be positive about it. And, setting for the first time, I felt like I set some goals this weekend, and, I was able to click those off. So it was almost just like a fairy tale situation. We get up in the hotel room, like, all right, we're gonna do this today. We're gonna win one of these things. And we're like, okay, like we're pumped, we're ready. And then it all actually happens. It's just like is like it wasn't even real for a moment. We were just so excited and so happy, and it just, like I said, all the work we put in together and all the long days, the hard days where it feels like it's just never ending. It's those the days like Sunday are what makes it all worth it, and we keep coming back and doing it more.
Yeah, and Jake, I mean, you had a really good career up until 2021 in terms of a lot of pace, a decent amount of success. Obviously, you had the Super Nats poles. I mean, pace has never been the issue, but when you look back now from 2025 to your younger self, what do you think you've evolved the most kind of in this return to the full-time seat on the karting scene? And kind of where have you kind of gained the most in terms of Jake Drew, the driver, compared to where you were 4 or 5 years ago?
I think I'm definitely, well, maybe not. I'd like to say I'm a bit more mature behind the wheel, but not always maybe, but I do my best. But I think I'm a lot more, probably a lot more analytical with what's going on with the go-kart and with, on the engine side, the chassis side, the tires, whatnot. And just trying to be as perfect as possible and have as good an understanding as I can. I think a lot of that comes from the car stuff I did as well, and always having to learn something new, and whether it's the more knowledge you have about what you're operating with, and the better you can probably be. So that definitely helps a lot, and I pay really close attention to what's going on with my car and whatnot. And that also through all the coaching, there's things that you repeat to the drivers, and there's things that you're sharing information with that maybe you don't always are thinking about when you're driving and yourself. So I definitely feel myself now, like, or hear myself in my own head while I'm driving, like going over things that I'm preaching to my own drivers or teaching them. Like, you still got to follow those rules too. If I want them to change or be better, then I got to practice what I'm teaching too. And I think that goes a long way and kind of helps everything slow down and just understand what I'm trying to accomplish when I'm out there in the go-kart.
Yeah, so you mentioned the kind of taking the analytical side of the car paddock and the car experience that you had back into the karting seat, and that being kind of one of the biggest developments you had. And I feel like you have a really unique story in the sense that, we hear all the time from 14, 15, 16-year-old kids about the whole karts to cars transition. Oh, we'll talk more about this karts to cars, like what does it take, all this and all that. But the flip side is when you've been in cars for multiple years. You've been not just in cars, but racing oval cars, racing in the truck series, racing in ARCA, where it's kind of a completely different paddock environment. It's a completely different car environment. What sort of lessons have you learned both inside and outside of the seat from the cars? And ultimately, do you think that it's helped your karting in terms of it being a net positive in comparison to maybe some of the other avenues you could have taken over the last few years?
Um, yeah, I mean, for sure it's helped, right? Like, I talked about, learning new things and whatnot. I kind of felt like at the end of my like sort of main karting career at the time, like I was just kind of going through the motions sometimes, like wasn't really, super, like I said, analytical with what I was doing. I could just, I'd go to cow speed, 3 days a week sometimes it felt like, and it's just out there like muscle memory, not really paying attention to everything that's going on with the go-kart. You can just kind of adapt and change whatnot. But then once you get into the car stuff, it's all new, right? So you're paying attention to every little tiny nuances and what's going on, and just all the little fine details. So then you come back to the karting and you apply that, and you start to notice tiny little things that go on, and you kind of see that when you're watching the other drivers or whatnot, and maybe pay attention to things that sometimes get looked over. But um, also too, just the way you carry yourself through the paddock. I feel like I probably didn't always do that the best when I was younger, and now I try to you know, be a little bit quieter sometimes when I need to be, and just be professional and try to be an example for some of our younger kids that are under our tent, and kind of show them some of the steps that it takes, or the attitude you need to carry to, you know, some of these people are looking for support, looking for help or whatever. It's like, okay, well, really need to carry yourself the right way and try to do the best you can. And like I said, I'm at fault. I didn't always do the best job of that, and I try to do a much better job of it now. So from the personal side to the driving side, there's tons of things that I was able to take away from my car career, and um, looking to apply that as much as I can and share as many stories as I can and experiences with all the drivers I work with.
I want to talk a little bit on the personal side as well, right? You were, living out in North Carolina, and then this year you just made the move back to California. How was that? Because you go out there, I feel like, a kid with a dream, want to be a NASCAR one day, and it obviously doesn't work out. But, talk to me about the decision of coming back to California, of moving back, what that was kind of like from your shoes.
I mean, it's probably one of the hardest decisions I've had to make, I mean, um, I felt like I was always in a pretty tough situation. I always felt like I was one phone call away for one conversation away from something big in my car career. And at some point, you kind of just got to take a step back and look at it as a whole. And um, I felt like it was time to do that. And it was already getting, the year had already started. I didn't make the move back till March. I still went through, kind of January, February, trying to hold out and see if there was anything that was going to be coming or what opportunities I could maybe have in North Carolina. Um, but also too, like being away from family and friends and everything was getting kind of hard. And um, felt like the best decision was just to come back and kind of reset. And Tony always, had the door open for me. And um, back to just making a hard decision. It's just, um, sorry, kind of losing it here. It's, it was tough for 100%. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. Um, I wanted to do everything I could to make it work, and um, just kind of fell short of that. And happy that I can come back to karting and do something as good as I am now, and be proud of what I'm doing. But um, yeah, that's sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, like, looking back at the accomplishment you had this past weekend, like, what would you tell yourself back in March, right? Like, what is one thing that, if you are now, 3 months down the line, like, what is something that you're going to tell that you would tell Jake back in March?
It's all gonna be all right. Everything's got its way of working itself out. Everybody's lives go different. Not everything goes to plan, not everything goes the way you want it, but just always try to be happy with where you're at too. Um, I felt like I did a decent job throughout my car stuff too, like just always kind of taking a step back from where I was and enjoying that moment as a whole because I never knew when that next opportunity, or sometimes I didn't know when that next opportunity was going to come or when it would end and whatnot. So um, to be fast forward to where we are now, talking to myself a couple months ago, just be happy with what's going on, be ready for it, take everything as it comes, and just accept what you got and do the best that you can in every situation you're in.
And I guess I'm gonna take it a step further than Caleb did. Is we finally got Alex back from the greatest storm in the history of history,
Dude,
in Atlanta. I was gonna say I heard the thunder in the background at one point.
I was gonna
and
ask if I could hear it.
I thought at first there was a big storm behind me. And I like thought
No.
about it. I was like, wait a
Dude,
second.
because I went back and I watched the stream. When my screen went black, it was like the loudest thunder you've ever heard in your entire life, and just power out. Rip Simon. For those who understand how PCs work, I really don't that much, but I do understand that when your PC bricks, that's not a good thing. And his PC's bricked, so that basically means that like it is not functioning, and that is a very expensive fix. So, anyways, back to what we were talking about, but
Yeah.
I feel really bad for Simon.
Man, highly unfortunate. Hits keep on coming. But no, I was gonna say, Jake, Caleb talked about what would you tell yourself 3 months ago. I'm really curious what you would tell yourself a few years ago, like younger Jake Drew, pre-car stuff, pre-national level karting. Like, what's the biggest thing you've learned from this whole journey?
I don't think. I think it's really close to the same, right? Like I said, just being happy with where you're at, trusting where you're at, enjoying every moment as much as you can, and taking it all in. Always sometimes with I see it a lot in karting too, and it was something my dad always told me as a kid. Like, there's always another go kart race. There's always something coming, right? And you feel like sometimes you get stuck in this zone of you're just always preparing for the next thing, going through the motions, and um, sometimes it's okay to miss a race here or miss that, and just really enjoy the situation that you're in, and take it for what it's worth, and take everything that you can out of it and every positive you can. And even when things don't go your way, you just got to take what that is and learn from it, or try to adjust, and be better prepared for whatever the next situation is. And um, I think 5, 6 years ago, me, not knowing everything that's gone on, I think he would be thrilled. I don't think there's anything to frown upon or shy away from in what I was able to accomplish. I feel like I was able to accomplish way more than what was probably available, and through meeting great people, I was able to do really cool things, and made memories that I'm going to carry with me forever, and I'm super proud of that. And um, 5, 6 years ago, there's probably not much I really could have changed that would have brought me to a different outcome. And to me, that's okay, because, like I said, I'm super happy with what I was able to do. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would. And um, but if I couldn't, I'm totally okay with where I'm at now, and looking forward to whatever's coming next. But not too much enjoying. I'm gonna enjoy this week first, and then
There you
before we
go.
go racing
I was
again,
gonna say,
back behind the computer coaching.
I was about to ask, are we gonna throw a cart together for a Tri-C this weekend?
No, that was a fluke last time.
No, man. No, but I think like you mentioned, ultimately, everything's worked out. You're a national race winner. You have a host of kids that you've coached that I would say have made amazing progress. I mean, how's I know you talked about it being a kind of cherry on top to have Keegan in second, but working with that kid for years and seeing kind of the ups and downs for him, especially last year being his first senior year, how special was it to have a weekend where not only did you guys finish 1-2 in the final, but it felt like every heat race, every chance you guys got to run up front, he was right there lockstep with you fighting for the lead.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly special. And there was a moment in time where he was in the lead and kind of had a bit of a gap, and I'm like, well, I'm really not all too sure I'm going to be able to run him back down. I'm going to do the best I can, but I really know what he's capable of nowadays. And um, definitely makes me nervous sometimes. You look back and you see a similar cart to yours, you know who it is, and um, gives you pumps the heart rate up a little bit. But I think it was really cool to go back and watch the race, watch the heat race, watch the final where we were together. And I think a lot of that comes from just we know each other so well, so many practice days or so many days of us working together, coaching drivers. We know each other like the back of our hand, and know what every move is. We can anticipate what's going to be coming. So it was really cool to see that in motion in a real life situation, a real race situation where we're not just working with our drivers. And um, I know he got me at at a pro kart race earlier this year, but I felt like I kind of threw that one away. So I'm gonna keep pushing him. But no, I hope that I don't want to get beat by him too many more times, but I know those days are coming soon.
I want to ask you real quick. Obviously, like I missed like 20 minutes because the lag. But right after you won, came in the scales, and before we got the camera on you, before we got the interview, you said, you kind of spoke to me a little bit about, I feel like people don't understand that, like, I haven't done a lot of national racing in my career up until like the last couple of years when you've been on the main stage, right? But like, what do you think, unless maybe what do you think the biggest like misconception is about Jake Drew? Like that people maybe do not know or think differently about than what's actually the truth?
Yeah, I think at least on the karting side, I think that's one of them. Like, we see it's almost normal now that in the karting world that it's all these people that um, I feel like I hear a lot of stories, or parents talking about their kids. Oh, they got to go to all these big ginormous races, big go-kart races, because they got to show themselves and do the best they can and whatnot. And um, I feel like you can acquire all the skills needed still running regional stuff at home. Yeah, I ran a super nats here or a pro tour race there, but a couple one-offs throughout, probably from 15, 16 on. But I was never really running like the full series. And you know, in all the conversations I had through my car career, nobody went, "Hey, where did you finish that pro tour race in Tag Junior 3 years ago?" Like they didn't know that. It was all about who you were that day, what you were doing, and what you were capable of. And um, so I think that's a pretty big misconception. I talked to some of the junior drivers I coach and whatnot, and um, they kind of bring stuff up about running these big races, and I tell them that I've probably run less Pro Tour races than you have, and they look at me like I have two heads. That there's, how did you make it to cars? How did you do all these things? It's just everybody has these different paths that not everything has to go one certain way. Um, so I think that's probably the biggest thing for sure is just my career's probably been a little bit different than some of most, and um, I was able to make the most of it, I think, for the time being, and accomplish some really good, cool things.
So then with that, like with your experiences doing club, doing regional, doing a lot of national stuff now, especially like what's your viewpoint on the landscape of karting right now?
Uh, I think I feel like it's pretty healthy. I go to the races in California. I go to K1. We have, Tri-C, Pro Kart. We have big numbers. There's plenty of talent, plenty of drivers always there. Um, and then we go across the country. There's always big fields. So um, I feel like the sport's in a pretty healthy spot, and I feel like you guys are doing a really good job with the kart chaser thing and putting a lot more eyes on it. And um, I feel like everywhere I go, there's always a good conversation about karting, and um, I think it's as competitive as it's ever been, if not always getting more competitive, just with fine tuning everything. And um, I definitely think that it's good on all areas, even down to even the situation I'm in when I'm not driving, being behind the computer, working with the drivers. Um, there's an army that it takes of people to make all this work, and I feel like it's really good. It keeps everybody connected. There's a lot of people involved, and the more people involved, the more people are talking, the more things are getting talked about. Um, the more word gets spread around of whether the sport of karting or good talks about people. It all works hand in hand. It all works good together, and I think the sport's just going to keep continuing to grow, and probably see some big things and cool things over the next few years that we're all probably excited to see.
Absolutely. And you moved to Mooresville a couple years ago. We talked about that. For you, you kind of got to go work and even a couple times race at the Trackhouse Club races. For me, I've always been on the East Coast, and then going to see Tri-C and Pro Kart this year was the first time out on the West Coast. I'm curious to hear from the opposite perspective from your end. How different do you feel like the landscape is, not just in karting, but in racing in general on the East Coast compared to the West Coast?
Um, I'd say from a competitive level, it's pretty similar. I feel like K1 has a lot of excitement around it right now. It brings a lot of attention, and a lot of people are drawn to come race there. At any given event, just because they're just enjoying the venue right now. And so from a competition side, I think it's all very similar. Um, as far as like the weekend goes, I felt like there was a bit of difference there. I felt like on the East Coast, they seem to do like a lot more like double header style races where everything's a little bit more fast paced, probably less practice, where it almost feels like all of our weekends at K1 is like this long, drawn out weekend of 4 or 5 days, but um, really allows us to really dial in what's going on with the video, the data, the carts, the gearing, everything. Um, we're all able to really fine tune everything that's going on, and it really pulls the competition close together for all the teams. Um, so I think there's some good and bad on both sides. Sometimes, I feel like the weekends need to be a little bit faster paced and not have so much practice, but um, also too, when we're at a more club or regional level, that's when we're there to learn, right? And so I feel like that makes a bit more sense too. Um, allowing the drivers to be able to develop through the weekend and work off their teammates or the coach or whatnot, and try to learn as much they can and have as much valuable as weekend as they can.
Yeah, and have you seen kind of a difference between nowadays with K1 as opposed to 3 or 4 years ago when it was kind of in the works around the same time that Cal Speed kind of died off, or has it kind of been the club scene being similar?
Um, I feel like the club scene is bigger right now because it's more central to one spot. before, like you mentioned, we had Cal Speed, we had Adams, there was a couple tracks that everyone just kind of wanted to spread around and be at. But definitely now everything's a lot more central to one location and everybody just wants to be there. And I feel like whether it's a Tri-C race or a Pro Kart race, I almost feel like the competition level is exactly the same. It's all the same people. It's just it's a different tire compound, a different, maybe less intense of a weekend. Just, we might feel like the stakes are a little bit higher at one than the other, but, to me, it shouldn't make a difference. It's all the same people. You're all learning the same things. You're getting the same value out of it.
Caleb?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was just kind of transitioning into now you're working in the shop. We were talking a little bit today. What do what does your day to day look like now? Right, working for Tony. Whether it's packing the trailer. What does that kind of look like for you now, Jake?
In my opinion, it must look like 1,000 miles an hour. I feel like we're always going as fast as we can, trying to get things done. Um, I have to give a shout out to Kyle Babita. We work hand in hand together. We're side by side every day too, trying to get things done. And um, I feel like we had kind of had some things that we had to figure out early on, and kind of make it as fluid as possible. But I feel like we have a pretty good system down right now, and even some of the big races we go to, Kyle kind of hangs back and makes sure that everything's getting prepared for the next week. So today was a fairly easy day for sure. We're feeling pretty prepared for this weekend, already loaded up. But um, this past month was definitely tough between races at K1. We had Challenge Americas in Utah. We were shipping stuff out to Wisconsin. We had a couple people doing the Pro Kart race, and then Wisconsin this last weekend needed multiple carts for them, being prepared, everything like that. So last month was really hard.
You said what, like
Just
7 weeks straight, right? Something like that.
I don't know. I try not to count because it'll hurt. Um, but no, I mean, it helps too. Like, I think what comes to that too is that we're all, between myself, Tony, Kyle, Alex, Brendan, some of our mechanics, we're all together so much. It's all kind of like a family. And we have a good time together. So it doesn't matter how many weeks we go on, we're always having a good time and keeping each other happy. And it really works well. I think if anyone was not having a good time, they probably wouldn't be able to do it, or they wouldn't come back. And um, we all definitely help each other out when we can. But um, for sure, after the last month and a half or so, this month is looking very nice, and we'll be all refreshed and ready to hit the ground running at Newcastle for Pro Tour.
I know Tony's a big watch guy. I heard you picked one up this weekend. Talk a little bit about that.
I don't know if I want to talk about it yet. I'm still probably hurting out a little bit, but no. Very special watch that he played a big role in. Found it on Facebook Marketplace and it caught his eye, and he's very familiar with it for sure. So when he showed it to me, the story behind it was real special, and I knew it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I had to make the purchase. Probably didn't need to, but it'll be cool years down the road.
Yeah, well, we're getting close to the end of our segment here with you, Jake. The floor is all yours. Talk about whatever you want, what you got coming up, with Formula Works as well.
Yeah, just want to say thanks first of all to you guys and everybody that's involved with the Kart Chaser stuff. Um, Hopefully you guys get enough thanks, but it's really cool what you guys do for the sport, and definitely branching out. It feels like there's an announcement all the time of a new series that you guys are going to, and just putting eyes on every corner of the country for karting, and that really helps everybody as a whole. And want to say thanks to Tony Siragusa, Formula Works, Gary Carlton, GFC, and everybody that's involved in both those awesome programs. Give me not just the opportunity to race, but the opportunity to work and be part of something that's really cool, I feel, and not always just part of the standard. So really thankful to that. I know I probably got a lot of family watching right now, so want to say hi to them. I know I've been real busy the last few years and haven't been able to see them as much, but really appreciate everybody that follows along everything that I do, and always send me texts and messages and keep me feeling supported, and keeping a close eye on everything. Um, and thanks to all the kids I get to work with, all of our drivers, all the parents that put their trust in me and allow me to work with their great kids. And really cool to see all the great things that come out of them as they learn and progress through the sport. And always looking forward to what's coming next. And finally, let's put our heads down for Pro Tour as a team. Looking forward to that. Try to have a good showing there. Feeling really good after this last weekend. Looking forward to the rest of the year being behind the seat a bit more.
Hey, there you go, Jake. We appreciate you for taking time out of your busy life and joining us here tonight. But thank you. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, we're all super stoked for you, man.
Appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a good time.
Yeah, for sure. For us as well. Have a good night, man.
Thank you, Jake.
You too.
There you guys have it from Jake Drew. And there you guys have it for episode 56. Great conversation with Jamie. Great conversation with Jake. I think one of the biggest stories coming out of the weekend. But fellas, we're off to Cincinnati this week. At least two of us are. Myself and Alex are going to be over at Cup Karts North America for the second ever Summer Nationals. It'll be exciting. We have stars coming up as well. I won't be there, unfortunately. I know Alex will. But yeah, it's, we're excited for it. Busy weeks. We're live with episode 57 the week after Stars. That's going to be conjoined with CKNA and a little bit of what transpires next week at Stars. So we're excited for that. But for those of you that joined us tonight, we appreciate you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And we'll see you in about 2-3 weeks time. Thank you guys. Have a good night.